Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. Welcome to Robert Bellissimo at the Movies. If this is your first time here, this is a film channel where I have on different guests to do deep dive reviews into different films or talk about different actors, basically all things film. My guest today is Duke Haney, who was an actor and screenwriter, and he is an author. He wrote a really fantastic book called Death Valley Superstars, and our subject today, Christopher Jones, is it's a book of essays, and one of the essays is on Christopher Jones. He wrote a novel called Banned for Life and another book called Subversia. So, Duke, thanks again for doing this today.
Thank you for having me.
The plot, when three co-eds discover that the campus Casanova is dating them all at once, they lock them up in an attic and take turns having sex with them to drain the stud of his potency. And it was directed by Richard Wilson and written by Stephen Yafa. And Judy Pace is also in it. Yvette, I don't know if I'm saying this right, Mimieux. Maggie Thrett was the other. Those are the three women. So how do you feel about Three in the Attic?
You know, I liked it a lot more watching it this time than I had.
Yeah, so did I. I had the same experience. I thought when I first saw it, I thought it was really corny, and then when I saw it again, I was like, there's actually a lot of there's a lot of truth in the way men look at women, that very much the way Chris is, as objects and to manipulate and to use and to be selfish, and it's sort of certainly is something that is quite common. I don't. You look puzzled by what I'm saying, or you're reflecting, one or the other.
No, well, there's a guitar mounted on my wall here, and I just happened to just notice that some strings are missing, and I was trying to remember what happened to those strings, if I broke them or whatever. No, I think the movie is about sex warfare. And I don't think the film is just about the way that men see women. I think it's also about the way that women see men. And it's the inability of the Yvette Mimieux character to understand why the Chris Jones character would be unfaithful. Paxton Quigley. In this case, we can give him a name because it's such a silly name. Why Paxton Quigley has been unfaithful to her. I mean, this was before the popularity of sociobiology came out, which for a while was very popular, but as it applies to sex, I mean, basically the idea was that the essential idea, I mean, I'm really simplifying this, is that that men spread the seed, and so they're sort of born to be promiscuous in a sense, and women or females, I'm sorry, I shouldn't just say men, but this is something that you see across the animal spectrum, and females tend to be much more selective in mating. They have a limited number of eggs, and in some cases, well, it's certainly in humans, so they tend not to be promiscuous. And I know that this is an idea that's offensive, perhaps to progressives now, because they want to believe that that men and women are basically exactly the same. They just happen to have this different genitalia, but hey, that's nothing. That can be done away with very easily. Anyway, so it's really her revenge that she visits on Chris, basically. The Paxton Quigley, her character's revenge on him. I mean, it's sort of her. She's the one sort of pulling the strings and getting the other two girls to comply with her. and she's utilizing a female sexual strength there, which is that women can recuperate from intercourse a lot more readily than can men. So they just sort of sexually exhaust him. And he's like literally dying. He's being fucked to death.
Well, that was both funny, but also like it was sadistic and funny at the same time, because I think I don't think they necessarily wanted to kill him, but it was almost as if they wanted to ruin sex for him forever. That's how I took it. I don't know if that's what how you saw it.
No, it's interesting. Well, he
make him sick of it,
Right. Well, he says right away in the film that he says that he announces immediately in a voiceover that he is a casualty of the sexual revolution.
Right.
And his dilemma, of course, is the classical male movie hero romantic dilemma. Do I commit or do I not? So it's rather conventional. The film is rather conventional in that he is he's trying to determine well, what do I settle down? Do I want to grow up? Is this growing up? There was a lot of distrust in the 60s of the sort of white picket fence idea. In fact, they talk in the film, John Beck, I think it is the name of the actor, who later has some success, but he's sort of Chris's sounding board,
Paxton sounding
board, right? And they're always just, so Paxton goes to this guy and it sort of relates all of his adventures to him, and he says at one point, I'm thinking of moving in with her, or settling down with her, and this is just horrifying to the John Beck character. He's like, and he says something about his distrust of that whole domestic thing. What you see throughout the film is that there's a lot of male complicity and female complicity. The guys, there's a motel that Paxton quickly keeps renting for his assignations, and the elderly proprietor of the motel is, he's kind of like, hey, if you need any backup, just give me a ring, and Chris's frat brothers, he's kind of they just dig the fact that that he's so successful with girls, and
right.
And there's a lot of wink, wink, nod, nod going on between him and all the guys. But obviously there's a lot of female solidarity in the film also.
Yeah.
So and that all sort of rings true to me to this day.
Oh yeah.
But I agree with Camille Paglia that there's truth in sexual stereotypes.
No, that really stood out to me. I don't know why it didn't the first time. At first I just thought, okay, he's womanizer, and he eventually, commits to a woman, which is what he does. But I think it was certainly exploring those dynamics and coming of age, as you will, and as you said, really a product of the time of people starting to question the white picket fence and whether that is bullshit or worthy of our lives and stuff like that. It was certainly came from that era. But I enjoyed it a lot more. I really loved that song in it, and I think Tarantino used
it, and used it in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. He's a fan of the film.
Yeah.
Then again, he's a Chris Jones fan, right? And the last time I had seen the film was actually it screened. It was a 16mm print. I think that's all they could find, which does not bode well. I mean, I would guess that the negative has been lost, or because Tarantino has a lot of clout, and these labs have been known to strike new prints for him, just for him to show at his theater.
Wow. So you saw it at his theater?
Mm-hmm. It was a very, very bad damaged 16 millimeter print that they showed, and the reds had all kind of turned a bit magenta, for example. The color was a bit washed out. And actually, I ran into somebody there. It was showing it was a double feature. The other film was Sterile Cuckoo, and when I walked out of the theater, there was a guy standing there. For some reason, he had bought both of these films were based on novels, and the guy was holding a copy of each novel. And I had not even realized up to that moment that Three in the Attic was in fact based on a novel. The name of the novel is not Three in the Attic, however. And Stephen Yafa was the author of the novel. I actually read a magazine article that he wrote about trying to get Three in the Attic set up at major studios. I mean, he went through a whole process where he ended up at AIP. But
well, they said is this a story where they said, well, you'll never get it made because it's too, because of the censors, you wouldn't even be able to get released. But obviously by 68 you could have a film like this, because now the Hays Code was gone and it was the rating system.
Yeah, I think it was shot in 67. I mean, already mainstream films were experimenting with nudity more and more.
Yeah.
But one other interesting aspect of the film, by the way, is that the three women are we have a wasp, a black girl, and a Jew.
Yeah.
And so, of course, it's the wasp that he has the deepest connection with.
Right.
But I found that kind of a funny little thing, that there's this sort of strange, some kind of strange subtext going on there. But I mean, each woman, is representative of an entire demographic, if you will.
Yeah.
They're all arty, and he's arty too. They're all, each of the girls, like the Yvette Mimieux character, seems to be literary in some way. She.
Yeah.
And the Jewish girl is, I think, doesn't she recite a poem or something? Anyway, she's always painting flowers on her face, and
well, he meets her so randomly, like in the middle of a forest or something. I almost thought, that's when I started to think, well, maybe the other two women are just in his head. It's all like a bad dream, like, because he met her just like it's such in a way which was totally fantasy like driven. I don't think that's what I don't think the film was saying that it's all we're in his head. But that there certainly were some aspects to meeting her that I thought, well, that just seems so unusual. But maybe it was the 60s. I don't know.
Well, it was unusual at that time to have interracial love scenes, as you know.
Right.
So the film was sort of daring in that way.
Yeah.
I read a comment on YouTube. It was the usual, woke thing, sexist, racist, homophobic. I mean, it is sort of homophobic because Paxton Quigley uses the F word at one point.
Oh, right. Oh, and he also talks about, in order to sleep with the Jewish girl, he says, "Oh, I think I'm gay. Yeah. You got to help me get out of this." And she's so.
But you see that a lot. That's an old-fashioned thing, That's been another. I mean, Rock Hudson does that in Pillow Talk to get into bed with Doris Day, or one of those films. I think it's Pillow Talk. That's as old as the hills. So I mean, I forgive all that kind of silly stuff from the past. I don't see that the film is particularly racist. I thought it was rather interesting that there is a line. He does say something about Aunt Jemima. You come off like Aunt.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But that was just I didn't quite understand that line. But she's an interesting character.
I wonder if he meant wholesome. I wonder maybe he meant like, oh, you come off as wholesome, like I don't know if that's what he meant. That's what I took from it.
Well, she doesn't. She comes
But
off like
she
a
does.
Southern belle.
Yeah,
I mean, she
yeah.
talks like Scarlett O'Hara in the film. It's like,
Right.
well, I tell you, Paxton,
Yeah.
I'm just sitting here in my clothes, and I'm just, it's really, and she, at one point, she goes into this thing. She had transferred to this arty college, and I don't know where it's supposed to be. The film was shot in North Carolina.
Right.
I think, possibly Chapel Hill. I don't know, but the exteriors anyway. It looked to me like once there's some shots of Chris and I think Yvette Mimieux. They're walking. It looked to me like Los Angeles. That looked to me like they had done a pickup, some pickup shots in L.A. and maybe some of the interiors are done in L.A. too. But a lot of those exteriors were done in North Carolina. Um, and so when he first meets her, she goes into this thing about transferring from Howard University, this black college, and she sort of critiques, um, both sides of you know, the the black identity at the time. You have the militants on the one hand, I guess the sort of proto Black Panthers, but then she is critical also of these sort of um, black students at Howard who were sort of modeling themselves after white people, and so she had just sort of gotten out of the whole situation
Right.
and gone to this arty college. I don't know that line. It was really weird because it comes about when he discovers that she's teaching uh, uh,
Yeah.
these black students.
Yeah.
And using some sort of teaching method that it's a whole sort of thing of uh, teaching I don't know, numbers or something, through song or something like
Yeah.
that. They're all snapping their fingers, and so it sort of looks like a sort of, I don't know, an experimental teaching method of some kind. And I guess the idea is that she, in fact, is socially engaged, politically engaged, although she had earlier feigned to him that she was sort of turned off to all of that stuff. I guess that was the idea of the line.
Yeah. Yeah. It could be. It did sort of, it did sort of not shock me, but it just seemed out of place. But I suppose one has to reflect on why he may have said that. But yeah, I enjoyed it much more the second time. And was there anything you discovered in when you were researching Chris Jones about the making of this film? Was this a better experience for him?
He said something somewhere about basically he just had to go to the set every day and get into bed with different girls, and so it was a lot of fun. I think he's very good in the film. I mean,
Yeah, he is.
to me
Yeah,
it shows that he had a untapped potential for comedy. I think
yeah.
he has a nice comic touch in it, and he's very expressive facially, um, and one point he's wearing black leather pants like Jim Morrison, his romantic rival Jim Morrison. Although maybe they were not romantic rivals yet. I know, but uh, once again, he sort of, he's a sex object in the film. I mean,
Right.
and that makes him sort of an unusual actor at the time, because being a sex object was sort of, inadvertent for traditional leading men. It was like, well, if you want to see me that way, you can, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here to blow up bridges and shoot people and do karate and drive
Mm,
fast and
yeah.
talk tough and beat up criminals and that kind
Right.
of thing.
Right.
But Chris is really presenting himself as a movie star the way that Jim Morrison presented himself as a rock star.
Mm,
He's kind of like, look at me, don't I look good? You know I do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I never realized that. I suppose that's so normal now that
I think we
that
moved away from it, and I think that's one thing about the film that I found interesting. Sorry to interrupt you, but
no, it's okay.
but you know, ultimately, if this movie is about the sexual revolution, and in some way it is,
Yeah,
definitely. I mean, it announces itself as being about the sexual revolution right away. I mean, ultimately, it 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 doesn't really seem to believe in salvation through promiscuity. It seems to think that that's a dead end, and it sort of portends the failure of the sexual revolution. And I think that we're living in pretty puritanical times now.
mm,
I think they're you know, much more puritanical than the times I grew up in the 70s. You know, uh, uh, I I uh, I think in a sense we've all become bored with sex. You know, we sort of have all tired of it in some way. We moved away from it, and you know, you don't really see it a lot of sex scenes in mainstream films any longer, as far as I know. And uh, movie actors of both sexes don't really seem, you know, the sexuality is not emphasized very much. It seems to me. You know, we just seem to have moved away from it. Uh,
yeah, certainly in films, but perhaps more so in terms of the way since this film, perhaps more men were well, maybe not in the 70s as much, but which were fine with being like the sex symbol or very much like his character was treated, you know, as a sexual object. You know, I think you know, even movie stars are happy to go model, and no one's gonna, you know, put it down like like he would have been probably perceived that way from these kind of movies. I imagine, like, oh, look at this, you know, from that male point of view. I don't know if you would. I don't know if that makes sense.
it does.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm thinking about the fact that, I mean, because originally you were talking about, you know, the male objectification of women, you know, when
Yeah.
you first began to talk about the film. But I mean, actually, there's that bit in the film where he does a nude scene, which I think was fairly uncommon, you know, for men at the time. And you know, he's posing, interestingly, as a sort of as a Greek. You know, he has the crown of laurel on his
Oh
head,
yeah. Yeah.
and he's posing for Judy Pace. She's doing a painting of
Oh
him,
yeah. That's right. Yeah.
and then he goes to look at the canvas, and she's only painted his face. And he says, "Well, why did you have me take my clothes off?" And she says, "Well, you can't blame me for wanting to paint now, you know." And so she basically manipulated him into taking his clothes off, you know,
Right. Right.
to be her eye candy, essentially.
Yeah.
So you do see,
You see it
um,
on both sides.
but that's kind of a
Certainly.
male projection of the way female sexuality works to some degree, I think. Anyway, you know that you know that you know the assumption is that you know that women objectify men precisely as men objectify women. I do think that uh, both sexes are given to objectification, but I think the basis can be different, you know, for each sex.
So do you think in the film they were sort of saying like saying, oh, it's both the same on both sides, or do you think they were saying it was more on from his side, that he was much more of the sort of manipulator, objectifier type of guy?
He's manipulative to a degree. I mean, he's sort of a sexual philosopher. I mean, you know, he throughout the film, he's sort of giving pointers to the audience. It's a bit like that British film, The Knack. You know, it's like, hey, boys, if you wanna score, here's a way to do it.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
When he's talking to the friend, that was very much like he was almost giving his friends lessons.
yes,
You
but
know,
but
this
he's
is how
also
you do
giving the
it. The
audience lessons
audience, yeah.
also. You know,
Right, right.
so he is manipulative, but at the same time, um, the women come to him too. They
Yeah.
solicit him.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And interestingly, there's a moment in the film that's kind of a turning point for him. Um, there's this fraternity party, what they call a pig party, and there's some drunken,
Yeah,
I don't know
the
if it's a
like
hooker or
sort
floozy of some
of,
kind.
yeah, not so much a stripper, but somewhere between a stripper and a prostitute. Yeah, that
Somebody's
would,
been picked up in a bar, it looks like to me, and she's getting
yeah,
drunk and she's taking off her clothes, and all these guys are sort of jeering at her and
yeah.
cheering her on.
I
And they
saw that
sort
as
of
his consciousness becoming, because he starts to be appalled by the way they're treating her. I
right.
don't know if you
And
saw it that way.
that's exactly what happens. And so
Yeah,
he's sort of in a way of seeing sort of the you know the dark side, the ugly side of this kind of objectification, if you will. It's
yes,
abusive,
yeah, yeah,
and so it's at that point that he decides, okay, I'm going to opt out of this. I'm going to commit to to the WASP,
right.
my fellow WASP, and we're going to settle down and have WASP babies, I guess. Although they don't talk really about that, but
Yeah,
and and of course, it's precisely at that point that we learn off camera that these three have come together and exchanged notes,
right.
as mistresses will do. Um, and
Sounds like Dynasty or something,
but yeah, and they imprison him in the attic and basically, try to teach him never to enjoy sex ever
Yeah,
again.
yeah. It's quite out there. I wonder what modern audience people today would. I know you said some of those comments you saw.
I can't see the film going over well.
Yeah.
I just it's flippant in a way that people are no longer capable of flippancy.
Right, right.
Flippancy will send you to the guillotine. And and it just the racial and sexual politics are too primitive for a refined palate now,
Yeah.
and it's
That's too
just
bad. It's too bad. I think you're right, and I think it's too bad because I think apart from some of the criticisms, I think are fair that we mentioned, but I think it's a very tongue in cheek look at real issues, and the real issues of even today, right? So um,
and
I
they
think
really
people should
drive
see
that
it.
home. They really drive that
Yeah, they
home in
do.
the little
Yeah,
cartoon at the end of the film. Now you see, I was thinking about that. I always found it really weird, but at the end of the film, there's this odd little cartoon that plays during the end
the
credits, and
credits.
and
Yeah,
it goes on for quite a while. It's actually rather well done, but it's kind of in a way it's completely out of sync with the rest of the film. But I was kind of thinking about the fact that that the two figures in the cartoon, they're sort of these eggs with legs. They're walking around. There's a male and a female. They're married,
yeah.
and they're supposed to be middle-aged audience members who've just seen the film. And so the wife says, "I bet you really envied Paxton Quigley, didn't you, Harry, or something?" And he's, yeah, well, Marge, yeah, I kind of did, And you sort of see them go home, and you see that she's preparing herself for bed. She's putting curlers in her hair. It's implied, and then he makes a pass at her, and she's like, "Oh, forget it," and so you kind of in a way see the future of the Chris Jones character and the Yvette Mimieux character, through this little cartoon. I mean, this is what it's going to turn into. I mean, this is the white picket fence, this
Yeah.
sexless,
Oh, right. Yeah,
kind
yeah.
of, um, you know, uh, you know, marriage, in which the people are sort of, they're together, but not really together.
It's kind of like the end of The Graduates. I think is
Mm,
came out, which is similar, right? Which was
right.
around the same time. It's what's next, Where's that bus gonna take? Also has a bus ending,
Yeah, the one where they have that kind of lost look, on the
Yeah,
bus. I mean, where they're sort of like, well, what now?
yeah,
And Yeah, and one other thing I would just like to say about the film is that it's a great time capsule just in terms of capturing the way people actually looked in that period, because it does not look at all. Most people in the film do not look at all like we think people in the 60s look. I mean, they look like they're preppies. They're very clean cut.
That's true.
The
Yeah.
only people in
It's
the
not
film
the
who kind of look,
long-haired hippie that we think of now.
no,
Yeah.
the only hippies in the film are the ones manufactured by Hollywood. I mean, you know what I mean, hippies. Like Chris
Yeah.
is wearing like love beads at one point,
Right.
and the Jewish girl is painting flowers all over her face, and
Yeah.
she's kind of a quasi beatnik anyway. She looks sort of more like a beatnik character than a hippie character. But Hollywood
Yeah.
could never quite distinguish the two anyway.
Right.
And the hippie did evolve out of the beatnik, but she has these black bangs like the beatnik girls, and she sort of wears a lot of dark colors and all that. So
Yeah.
she sort of looks
much
like
more
a
of that.
widow.
Yeah. Yeah. Certainly much more of that sort of look as opposed to the flower child, when we think back.
Yeah, she looks a little bit more when she's not painting her face and stuff. She looks sort of more like the girl who'd be snapping her fingers at the Beatnik Cafe.
Yeah.
Dig it,
Yeah.
man.
That's someone who's a friend of Ginsberg or something. That's what I thought. No, it's a fun film. I wonder if Tarantino, he gets all these prints. I'm surprised he doesn't work in like Scorsese in remastering some of these movies that maybe he'd want to see remastered. I don't know if he's tried, but maybe there will be a remastered version of this one day. Who knows?
They'd have to find the negative, and I'm telling you, the fact that they were unable to dig up a 35 millimeter print, that's not a good sign.
Right.
It must mean that there aren't many prints around, and so you'd have to go to the negative, and a lot of negatives get lost.
So,
by the way, this film is in Once Upon a Time in America. There are shots, I believe. There is a shot of somebody driving by, and you can see the film was
the
playing
billboard.
At a theater. Right. Yeah. It's a billboard. I thought it was outside a theater. It was showing that the film was showing.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, not a billboard.
Like that.
Yeah, I know what you mean. The show times. Yeah. I because I only saw that not long ago, and I noticed it. I was like, oh, there's the Chris Jones reference, and plus the song, as we mentioned, the great song in this film, song.
I love that song. I mean, I walk around singing it to myself all the time.
It sticks with you. Well, even Wild in the Streets, the other film, that song.
That's a great song too.
That's another one. That's such a.
What is it called? Things to Come. Shape of Things to Come.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I wasn't.
That's the name of the song.
Okay, the one like the 14 or Die, whatever they're saying in the vote. I couldn't get out of my head.
No, it's great. It was done by the Wrecking Crew, for God's sake. I'm pretty sure the Wrecking Crew were the musicians. So I mean, you can't beat the Wrecking Crew. I mean, they were they were amazing. Those people. I sort of like Wild in the Streets. I just it doesn't really quite work for me. It doesn't quite cohere for me. It's just not. I don't like the way it's lit. Again, going back to the whole photography thing, and I know the casting's a little weird. It just doesn't quite come off for me. I think Three in the Attic tonally.
Yeah.
It's a little better. Although I respect the audacity of Wild in the Streets. The Three in the Attic is also audacious.
Yeah. They certainly both are. I mean, they were. I think. Yeah, they were both quite big moneymakers, at least in the drive-in circuit. They both, from what I read, they both did quite well, and I think that's really what got him Looking Glass War. So, but if it's unfortunate that he had such bad experiences with the drugging and his mental health, that we didn't see any more from him, other than that one film from the mid '90s. But
Yeah, yeah. No,
yeah,
he just had his fill. I mean, he was in terrible psychological shape. Um, uh, Even his advocates will say now that he had some sort of a breakdown. Um, um, Although I think there may have been some denial of that earlier, but he's offered various explanations for it over the year, or did over the years. But in effect, I mean, really, I mean, he was just, he said at one point he was exhausted, and I given his turbulent romantic life and the fact that he was just going from one movie to the next, boom, 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 it's understandable
yeah.
that he would have been exhausted. I think,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, from all you wrote in your book and from what I read, I can't say I can't say I blame him from walking away. But for anyone who's interested, you in Death Valley Superstars, Duke's book, as I said earlier, he's got a great essay on Chris Jones, which really goes into detail about the life and career of Chris and why he may have left his career in 1970 after Ryan's Daughter. And it has great essays on Elizabeth Taylor and Marilyn Monroe and so Steve Cochran and so many
Yeah, a lot of other people. Well,
so many great essays.
Thank you.
So you can and I got that on Kindle, Amazon. Can people get that directly from? Do you sell that directly, or is it purely Amazon? And
I don't sell it. You can
okay,
get it through any online. You can order it from a bookstore. You can order it, from any online retailer. It's very cheap on Kindle. I wanted it to be cheap, because I think it's absurd to pay $10 for an ebook or something. I mean,
yeah,
I'm forced to do that in my research for. I'm always researching things, and I'll have to
yeah,
buy some $10 or $15. It's like absurd.
yeah. Books are insanely priced. I mean 10 for me for a Kindle is much. Bookstore it's $50. I'm like, oh my god, I know they're beautiful, but so it's almost
Well,
it's a
I'm
lot of
always
cash.
willing to pay for a hard copy of a book, because books are, they're, you know, for me, they're the greatest objects, and I wish more people treasured them and understood what a treasure they are.
Yeah,
But
I agree.
when I was a kid, when I lived in New York, I mean, if you walked into any person's apartment, I mean, everybody had a library. Everybody had shelves packed with books.
Right.
And as soon as I got out here, I go to people's houses and they're like, "No books. Where are the books?"
Yeah,
You know.
they're on their phones. If they're even if they're on their phone, that's assuming they have ebooks. But
mm, mm.
no, I agree. I love to buy books. I just space wise, the Kindle is a little more convenient. But yeah, you
No,
can get
I
it.
use it occasionally. I mean, I do. It's a tool, but it's just, it really it really is like a thing of film. There was a time when I stopped going to the movies. I have to say, I was just watching things at home, and then I began to go back to watch movies. And it makes a difference. It's a big difference seeing it on a huge screen in an auditorium.
Oh yeah,
And it's the same with books, But people just don't seem to care about that experience, Or they all
yeah,
claim that they're too busy. I can't. Oh, I'm just too busy. But they make time for all sorts of silly things. They make time to post on Facebook and Twitter and this and that, But they don't make any time to read. They don't make it. They never have time to go to movies, and they just want to do everything on their phone. So I don't know. You get what you pay for. Robert, you turned sideways. Hello? I'm going to sign off for both of us. Thank you very much for watching. And Robert, I guess I'll hear from you via email or something. All right. Thanks again. Bye.
Sorry about that, folks. I seem to have had a technical difficulty, but we were done anyways. I think Duke was talking about books or people not making time for books. So sorry about that. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. If this is your first time here on my YouTube channel, please consider subscribing by pressing the Robert Bellissimo at the Movies logo. You will see it floating above my head in the top left corner to your top left in just a second. Just click on that and then click the bell in order to get a notification every time I release one of my new episodes or when I go live. Thank you so much, everyone. I will see you in the next episode.